when you read Lord of the Rings or when you read Harry Potter, how much of the image that the words create, the images that the words create in your mind are created by you? That is, you've got descriptions, but the descriptions aren't totally fleshed out. You see something on film, you don't get to unsee that. For example, if you've seen the Lord of the Rings films, you probably have in your mind's eye Ian McKellen as Gandalf. And Bug-Eyed, what's his name? Guy who played Frodo. Andy Serkis. No, he played Gollum. I can't remember his name.
Elijah Wood.
Elijah Wood, thank you. You know, who I think is a horrible, absolutely horrible Frodo. Okay? Gandalf, you know, Ian McKellen does pretty good. I don't even remember who plays Denethor. I told my first class when we get up to Denethor today, I said, you know, my wife and I rewatched the Hunger Games trilogy a couple weeks ago. Donald Sutherland should have been cast as Denethor, but he's American. Doesn't have a good enough Englishy accent, you know, so to speak. Anyways, so, I mean, once you see it in film, it's kind of burned into your mind who and what things, certain things look like. Okay? That's why adapting any book is really difficult. There are some films that have been made that are great adaptations. Holes, if you've seen Holes, it's superb adaptation. Princess Bride, if you've ever seen the film, read the novel. The novel is horrible. I mean, horrible. You want to swallow a cyanide pill after reading that. It is so depressing. Okay? Whereas Princess Bride finishes on, you know, the quintessential happy ending kind of thing. Somebody said something?
I know. I was like, I didn't know there was a book to Princess Bride.
Oh yeah. Starred the Neil Gaiman starred Charlie Cox in blonde actress Claire Danes. What was that movie? Not Starcatcher, Star Dreamer. Film's better than the book. Anyways. So we're picking up on 664, 665. Little bit of warning. If you haven't finished Return of the King, finish Return of the King. Okay? I'm going to try and finish it on Thursday. If not Thursday, it'll definitely be Tuesday. If you have finished Lord of the Rings and you haven't started Harry Potter, start Harry Potter. We're going to do Philosopher's Stone / Sorcerer's Stone one day for Chamber of Secrets, and probably one day for Prisoner of Azkaban to kind of get us a little bit back. But, big but here. Harry Potter is a hell of a lot easier to read than Lord of the Rings. Yeah. Why? You don't have 10 names every 3 lines. And it's not so full of description. And literally, you have, probably 10, 15% fewer lines of text on a page because it's spaced out a little bit more and all that kind of stuff. Okay? So, all right, picking up 664, 65, I think, is where we left off. So Faramir lets out, Boromir's dead. Frodo and Sam are surprised because they think, oh, that means all of our friends are dead. And then he kind of fesses up, bottom of 665, Boromir was my brother. Okay. Do you remember anything that Boromir had with him? They remember the horn. He says, yep. Horn was found, okay, first, and then Boromir was found later. 667. Faramir looks at Frodo and Sam's cloaks and says, yep, when we found Boromir, he was dead. But he was dressed in one of these cloaks, same kind of one you're wearing. Okay. He asks, can't you tell me more? Frodo says, not any more than I've said. Your tale fills me with foreboding, blah, blah, blah. So we're going to skip a bunch again. 668, top of the page. Faramir says, and you can tell me nothing about the cleaving of the horn. You can't tell me anything about how Boromir died? Frodo, I did not know of it. The day when you heard it blowing, if your reckoning is true, notice he's kind of mentally done the calculations, was the day when we parted, when I and my servant left the company. Now your tale fills me with dread, for if Boromir was then in peril and was slain, I must fear all my companions perish too, and they were my kindred and friends. And then he says this, will you not put aside your doubt of me and let me go? I am weary and full of grief and afraid. I have a deed to do or to attempt before I too am slain. Okay. Notice how his statement ends. Before I am slain. What's Frodo think is going to be the result of this journey? He's going to die. His hope for going back to the Shire, finding it unchanged, which is the idea he had when he left the Shire, okay, is kind of gone. He doesn't think he's going to go back to the Shire, all right? And he tells Faramir, go back, Faramir, valiant captain of Gondor, defend your city while you may, and let me go where my doom takes me. While you may, but you're not going to be able to for long, because once Sauron gets the ring, we're all dead. What's this showing us about Frodo's state of mind? It's not just that I'm going to die soon. We're all doomed. More polite way of putting what I was going to say. Okay? Faramir, I don't get any comfort out of this speech. You're not making me feel any better, but you surely draw from it more dread than need be. In other words, he turns into the cheerleader for Frodo. Come on, Frodo, suck it up, man. Doesn't mean they're all dead. I mean, okay, so Boromir's dead, but, somebody else may have lived. Unless the people of Lorien themselves came to him, who arrayed Boromir as for a funeral? Somebody had to live. Come on, Frodo, think. And he's like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Orcs wouldn't have done that, obviously. Okay. So they keep talking. And then, he shuts them up, page 669. He says, I stopped our speech earlier because we were touching on some dangerous stuff. And he mentions Isildur's Bane. You were not wholly frank with me, Frodo. That is, you didn't tell me the whole truth. I told no lies, and of the truth, all I could. No, you don't get me. I don't blame you. You spoke with skill in a hard place and wisely. But I learned or guessed more from your words than you said. You were not friendly with Boromir, or at least you didn't part in friendship. Faramir can read people, all right? He's a good judge of character. He says, you and Sam, you have some grievance with him. He goes, I loved him dearly, would gladly avenge his death, but I knew him well. In other words, I love my brother, and if I could, I would kill the person responsible for killing him, but I knew my brother. He doesn't say this. It's implied. My brother had faults. Okay? Isildur's Bane. That was a cause of contention. In your company. Notice the C is capitalized. It doesn't mean between just Frodo and Boromir. He means your whole group. Isildur's Bane caused division. Must be a mighty heirloom. Am I close? Do I not hit the mark? Near the mark? Close. Not in the gold. That is not a bullseye. There is no contention in our company. Though there was doubt. Doubt which way we should go. Okay, so notice, Faramir says, the contention was with Boromir. He wished this thing brought to Minas Tirith. Whether he erred or no, or erred as Americans pronounce it, or no, of this I am sure. He died well, achieving some good thing. In other words, I know Boromir. With all his faults. He wouldn't have died easily and he wouldn't have died badly. He would have given his life for something or someone else. Okay? So, they go on. In 670, they talk about Gandalf. And he gives some of Gandalf's other names, bottom of 670. And 671, we get 2. And Faramir says, what in truth this thing is Isildur's bane. What in truth this thing is, I cannot yet guess. Some heirloom of power and peril. A fell weapon, perchance, devised by the Dark Lord, and if that could give advantage in battle, Boromir would have wanted it. Alas, that ever he went on that errand. What errand? Up to Rivendell to relate the dream that first came to Faramir, and then several more times came to Faramir, before it finally once came to Boromir. That's the errand he's referring to. I should have been chosen by my father and the elders, but he put himself forward. That is, once the dream came to Boromir, he said, I must go. As being the holder and the hardier, both true. Notice Faramir isn't suggesting Boromir was somehow weaker or somehow less stout. Okay? And he would not be stayed. But fear no more. And he makes a categorical statement. And it's like a vow, an oath. I would not take this thing if it lay by the highway. Not were Minas Tirith falling in ruin, and I alone could save her. So, meaning thus, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory. No, I do not wish for such triumphs, Frodo, son of Drogo. So, if that's Isildur's bane, and I could use that to defend and protect Minas Tirith and get great glory for myself, he says, I would not stoop to pick it up. Why? So, using the weapon of the Dark Lord for her good and my glory, because it's the weapon of the Dark Lord. There's a legal idea. It's kind of the doctrine of tainted fruit. If a cop, comes and performs an illegal search of your house, and you've got something that you shouldn't have, let's say, something illegal, okay? And not just illegal, but like really, really, really bad illegal. And the cop tries to come up, and a prosecutor tries to come up with a reason for why the cop should have been able to do that. A good defense attorney is going to get all of that thrown out of court. Why? Because of the doctrine of tainted fruit. Anything that comes as a result of that discovery, of that evidence, like if you are questioned and you give something up because of what the cop has said based on something that was found in your house, all that testimony is inadmissible in court. Because the cop wouldn't be asking you that question if the cop or some other investigative, FBI, if the authorities hadn't improperly searched you in the first place. Okay? So tainted fruit means everything that flows as a result of that illegal search gets thrown out. Okay? He's suggesting any victory that would come as a result of using Sauron's weapon would be what? Tainted. What do we already know about the ring? What will it do to any mortal who possesses it? It will possess him or her. No matter how good you start off with owning the ring. Okay? Frodo, neither did the council. The council didn't want to use it either. Nor do I. Okay? And Faramir says what it is he would like to see in Minas Tirith. Didn't talk about this with my other class because we don't have time. The white tree and flower, again in the courts of the king. Silver crown return. Minas Tirith in peace. Silver crown return, what does that mean? The return of the king. I would like to see Gondor in full flower with a king on the throne, Charles III, the white tree growing in the, courtyard kind of a thing, and everything happy. That's a nice pie in the sky kind of wish, right? So they keep walking on, and let's see here. They make their way to the actual window on the west, the cave. 680, 681. So Sam and Frodo are now aside privately with Faramir, talking. They've had some food, they've had some drink, wine, so they're, feeling a little relaxed, a little put at ease. And Sam's talking about how beautiful Galadriel is, and how beautiful Lorien is. And Faramir says, then she must be lovely indeed, perilously fair. This is top of 680. Sam, don't know about perilous. Strikes me that folk takes their peril with them into Lorien, and finds it there because they've brought it. But, you could call her perilous because she's so strong herself. I mean, you could dash yourself to pieces against her like a ship on a rock. Now, and he stops himself. Now, Boromir, you would say, he took his peril with him. Come on, Sam, you're almost there. Yes, sir, begging your pardon. Fine man as your brother was, if I may say so, but you've been warm on the scent all along. Now, I watched Boromir and listened to him from Rivendell, notice, all down the road. Where was Sam in the Council of Elrond? Sitting on the floor beside Frodo, who was sitting in a chair. Wherever Frodo goes, Sam will be there. Okay? And he says, from the moment he first saw it, he wanted the enemy's ring. Frodo jumps out, cries out, Sam. Sam, says, save me. There I go again. Now look here, he addresses Faramir. He jumps up standing. Show yourself. Now's the chance to show your quality. Show us what kind of person you really are. Faramir. So it seems, that is. You're right. It is a chance for me to show you what kind of person I really am. So that is the answer to all the riddles. The one ring that was thought to have perished. And Boromir tried to take it by force. And you escaped. And you ran all the way from there to me. With the Ring of Rings, a pretty stroke of fortune, a chance for Faramir, Captain of Gondor, to show his quality. Ha! And he stands up very tall and stern, his gray eyes glinting. There's that verb again. Remember, one person throughout the entire novel, eyes glint, and it's not negative. That's Tom Bombadil, okay? Why do Frodo and Sam sprang from the stools, stand shoulder to shoulder, plopped against the wall, swords out? It's that, ha! Because what does that mean? I got you. You're mine. The ring's mine. There was a silence. All the men in the cave stop talking. They look over there in the corner, and they think Faramir's playing some kind of game with the two midgets. Sorry. Alas for Boromir. It was too sore a trial. What's meant by trial? Test. Temptation. Too great. How you have increased my sorrow, you two strange wanderers from a far country, bearing the peril of men. But you are less judges of men than I of halflings. We are truth speakers, we men of Gondor. We boast seldom and then perform or die in the attempt. And that's why I've got the Wanderer written up here. The Wanderer that had that Ubi-Sunt motif that I talked about, that, when they arrive, just before they arrive at the Hall of Edoras, at Theoden's Golden Hall, they go around that funeral burial ground, and Aragorn chants this song, where is the rider, where is the horse, where are blah, 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 which is based on his passage from the Wanderer. Well, this idea that he states, We boast seldom, then perform, or die in the attempt. That comes straight from the Wanderer, where the poet says, do not make a boast until you know the way your heart will go. That is, in the situation you're boasting about. Don't say, like characters do in the Old English poem Beowulf, we'll fight Grendel, because usually when they make that boast, they're drunk as skunks. The Danes are portrayed as a bunch of drunken sots. Okay? And they vow they're going to kill Grendel, and then Grendel comes in and cleans up the floor with them. All right? So, don't make a boast, but if you do, perform it. That is, achieve the boast. Okay? Think presidential candidates. I don't care what party, it doesn't matter. They all do the same. They all issue a boast, right? Whether they're running for the nomination of their party or running for the nomination, of their, party for the presidency. What does every presidential candidate do? Vote for me and I will do this and this and this and this and this and this. I will erase the federal deficit. I will wipe away all your student loans. I will give everybody a car. I will all kinds of stuff. And then what happens? It doesn't happen. Why? It's not performed. Okay? And often what happens is, I never knew things were as bad as they are. I mean, the real books were hidden. We didn't know the deficit was this bad. We can't do this, so we're going to do, X, Y, Z instead. Okay? So, we boast seldom and then perform, that is, when we do boast, we then perform or die in the attempt. So we either achieve our boast or we die trying. Okay? Did Boromir ever say, I swear on all that is good and holy in Gondor, I will not take the ring? No, he did not. Let me think about this for a moment. Wouldn't it have been a good idea back in Rivendell to have all the members of the Fellowship, I don't know, get Anduril, Aragorn's new sword, put your hand on it and go, I swear by Anduril and Westernessa and all the gods off in Valinor, I will not try to take the ring, and I will, if I am the last one, give it my last dying, breath to destroy the ring. Makes sense. Make them swear an oath to do it, but they don't. Not if I found it on the highway would I take it, I said. So notice, I know what this thing is now. I know what it means. Okay? And even knowing what it means now, Frodo, if you were to drop that ring on the floor right here, right now, I would not stoop to pick it up. Your problem, not mine. It's almost like he's saying, even if I were such a man as to desire this thing, and even though I knew not clearly what this thing was when I spoke, that is, when I said I would not stoop to pick this thing up, I should take those words as a vow. Now, why does he include that if I didn't know clearly what this thing was when I spoke? Well, I didn't know that we're talking about the enemy's one ring of power. I mean, no, you got to say that what I said earlier, what I promised earlier, that can't hold now. I mean, I can win the war with this thing. Come on, give me a little fudging room here. Okay? Why? Why does he say that? Read my marker. When I teach Introduction to Lit, and we're doing tragedy in drama, I always give students, talk about the definition according to Aristotle of what tragedy is and such. And then I always give them my definition of tragedy. And it applies to Greek tragedy, it applies to English tragedies. Shakespeare, it worked perfectly. And tragedy occurs in drama, as often in real life, When someone is forced to make a decision, but they don't have the information they need upon which to make that decision, that is, they only have partial information. Here's a good example, and here's why it's tragic. And I was a big supporter. I was actually quoted in the Wall Street Journal, about families that are torn apart because of this thing. In 2003, 2002, I don't remember the exact year, when the United States invaded Iraq, why did we go into Iraq? What did Iraq have to do with 9/11? Nothing. Why did we go into Iraq? Anybody know? Weapons of mass destruction. We know Hussein had them previously because he used them against his own people. I mean, he gassed entire cities or towns. Okay? And we're like, well, if a bunch of ragtag terrorists can take down the World Trade Center and take out the Pentagon, for all intents and purposes, for a few months, imagine what somebody could do with real WMDs. I was watching part of the Queen's funeral yesterday, and that my inner Gollum was kicking into high gear, and I was thinking, come on, guys, now's your chance. I mean, you want to pull off a terrorist incident. Think about it.
Oh, God.
You've got tens, hundreds of thousands of people.
And all the world leaders.
Lining that route, and all the world leaders. I mean, take out Westminster Abbey during the funeral, and you've taken out like 80% of the world's leaders. I mean, one swoop. Okay, you'd have to get through security. I mean, there would be some issues. But I bet somebody with, shoulder-fired missile from a little distance away could probably have done a hell of a lot. I've been there many times. I know the locations. I'm thinking, oh. But then what would be the result? All hell would be let loose, guys. Just, don't go there. So, we went because of WMDs. Did Bush have all the information he needed to have? No, he did not. We had some. George Tenet, the CIA director, said, we're like 95% sure. Colin Powell went to the UN. We've got, laid out the evidence. What was found? Not much. There were some old shells buried in the sand and things like that. And yeah, a lot of the weapons might have been moved to Syria temporarily, as some people still think and such. But the information wasn't there that was needed. Okay? He's saying, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. But I am not such a man. What does he mean, such a man? A man who would desire this thing. Or, I'm wise enough to know that there are some perils from which a man must flee. And the or kind of implies, and maybe even if there is a part of me that wants this thing, I know I should run away from it. Sit at peace. Be comforted, Sam. You didn't betray anything. Okay? So they sit back down. The men turn back to their seats and drink and such. He says, okay, Frodo, you did this thing on your own. I understand. I'll help you if I can. Chapter 6, the Forbidden Pool. Only one reason to talk about that chapter. Why do they need to call him capture? Capture Gollum? Been doing that all morning. It's got to be early Alzheimer's. I'm not kidding. Mom died of Alzheimer's. My dad died of Alzheimer's and a brain tumor. So, time's just, kicking away. So when we get to a scene in Harry Potter, I might tear up because it hits me almost every time. Why do they need to capture Gollum? He's broken the law. Faramir says, anybody who comes to this place without being brought in has forfeited their life, whether they know it or not. Okay? What did Faramir say he would not do to an orc? He would not deceive even an orc. He would not even tell a lie to an orc. And yet Frodo lies to Gollum. Okay? So, they capture Gollum. He looks into Gollum's eyes. 689 and following. Okay? He asks Gollum, where are you going? Where are you leading them? I mean, first he asks Gollum, why are you here? Gollum says, fish, I'm hungry. I want to eat. Fishes, you know. He says, where are you going? What's your business? We are lost. Middle of 689. Who hadn't thought about that before? We are lost, no name, no business, no precious, nothing, only empty, only hungry. Yes, we are hungry. Few little fishes, nasty, bony little fishes, for poor creature, and they say death. I just want to eat, and you're going to kill me just for being hungry. And, you know, we could jump right into the middle of Les Miserables, right? Jean Valjean gets thrown into prison for stealing a loaf of bread for his hungry family. So, Frodo says, tell me why you're here. Frodo says, trust me, Gollum. Okay? Gollum stares into bottom of 689, Faramir's face. All light went out of them. They stared bleak and pale for a moment into the clear, unwavering eyes of the man of Gondor. There was still silence. Then Gollum drops his head, says, we doesn't know, we doesn't want to know, never came here, never come back. We doesn't know what? When Faramir stares into his eyes, he's kind of questioning Gollum. Gollum's like, I don't know where I am. I don't want to know where I am. I'm never coming back. Okay? There are locked doors and closed windows in your mind and dark rooms behind them. Dark, how does he put it? There are locked doors, closed windows, and behind those are dark rooms. You're hiding something. But in this, that is, about where you are right now, you speak the truth. What oath will you swear never to return? Master knows. Okay, so Freddy, yeah, I'm okay. If he swears on the master, that's, you know, on the precious, that's okay. So, 691. Faramir wants to know, how are you going to lead them into Mordor? He says, this I will not have secret. You've got to tell me. Frodo says, I'll answer for him. He brought me to the Black Gate, but it was impassable. Faramir, there is no open gate into the Nameless Land. So we came this way. There's another path. Near to Minas Ithil. Faramir, Minas Morgul. Minas Ithil, Minas Morgul are the same place. Minas Ithil used to be like the second city of Gondor, but it's not anymore. Now it's part of Mordor, and it's been renamed. I don't know. There's a pathway, climbs up, goes over the mountain, goes under the mountain through a tunnel into Mordor. Do you know the name of the pass? No. It's called Cirith Ungol. And he looks at Gollum. Is that not its name?
No, yes. We heard the name once, but what does the name matter to us? Master says he must get in, so we must try some way. There is no other way. No.
No other way? How do you know there's no other way? Anyways, he says, Frodo, not wise to follow him. Show me another way. Top of 692. Where then shall I go? Back to the Black Gate and deliver myself up to the guard? What do you know against this place that makes its name so dreadful? What do you know? Nothing certain. Okay, so if he doesn't know anything certain, then what does he know? Only old report and the rumor of bygone days. Stories, tales, legends, wives' tales. If Cirith Ungol is named, old men and masters of lore will blanch and fall silent. They immediately turn pale and they stop speaking. Just the way you want to go for your, vacation. So, don't go that way, but they have to. So, Frodo, Sam, and Gollum head off And they go to the crossroads, page 702. Okay. So the crossroads, here's Mordor. Road leads west, going through Gondor and finally off to the sea. Up north, you've got the Dark Tower up here, the Vale, Paths of the Dead, the Dead Marshes here, Rivendell, way up there. Way down to the south, you have Harad, which is off the map, so to speak. Okay? So they get to the actual crossroads. And we get this description. I'm going to read all of it. 702. Standing there for a moment, filled with dread, this is the last page of this chapter. Filled with dread, Frodo became aware that a light was shining. He saw it glowing on Sam's face beside him. So he becomes aware of the light because he sees Sam's face kind of glowing. And so he turns to where the light is shining onto Sam, and he sees beyond an arch of boughs the road to Osgiliath running almost as straight as a stretched ribbon down into the west. There, far away, beyond sad Gondor, now overwhelmed in shade, the sun was sinking, finding at last the hem of the great, slow, rolling pall of cloud and falling in an ominous fire towards the yet unsullied sea. So the sun dips beneath the bank of clouds, and suddenly the stab of light shines all the way down this long avenue, so to speak. All right? The brief glow fell upon a huge sitting figure, still and solemn as the great stone kings of Argonath. Not as big, it's just, it looks like kind of one of the kings. The years had gnawed it, violent hands had maimed it, its head was gone, in its place was set in mockery. A round, rough-hewn stone, rudely painted by savage hands in the likeness of a grinning face with one large red eye in the midst of its forehead. What is the large red eye symbolic of or emblematic of? Who does that represent? Sauron. What image did Saruman's orcs have on their cloaks and such? White hand. Okay? Upon its knees and mighty chair and all about the pedestal were idle scrawls mixed with the foul symbols that the maggot folk of Mordor use. That's referring to orcs. So it's got all kinds of graffiti scrawled all over this statue. All right? But the head's missing. Suddenly, caught by the level beams, Frodo saw the old king's head. It was lying rolled away by the roadside. Look, Sam! Look! The king has got a crown again. So the light shines on the head. The eyes were hollow, the carven beard was broken, but about the high stern forehead there was a coronal of silver and gold. Coronal, a crown. Okay? So these flowers have made a wreath around the head of the stone head that's lying on the ground. The flowers are white, so where's the gold from? The light of the setting sun. They cannot conquer forever, said Frodo. But notice it's an exclamation. And it's almost like he shakes his hand. They can't conquer forever. And then what happens, like immediately, the sun sets. And unlike when the sun sets here, it's like somebody flips the switch and it's pitch black. See, just stay outside tonight when the sun sets and you can go, it's still pretty light for the next half hour, 45 minutes. Here, the sun dipped and vanished, and at the shuddering of a lamp, black night fell. Why do we get that description? In this context, because notice what the context is. They cannot conquer forever. Boom! Pitch black. What's the pitch blackness mean? Okay, possibly. Want to bet? Or, you're right, they can't conquer forever, but you're screwed. That is, it might not be total blackness forever, total darkness forever, but for you, Frodo, like I said, time's a ticking. Stairs of Cirith Ungol. So they find the stairs and they go up and up and up and up and up and up and up. They walk and walk and walk. It seems like miles. Page 711. I shouldn't have this much time. I must have forgotten something. Because with my previous class, I think we only had like 20 minutes left when I got to here, and we've got 45. They make their way up. They stop for a bit. And they start to think of water. But of their water, they were sparing and took only enough to moisten their dry mouths. Sam, I wonder when we'll find water again. I suppose even over there, meaning in Mordor, they drink. Orcs drink, don't they? Sam, Frodo, yes, they drink. But let's not talk about that. We don't want to drink what they drink. Then we should fill our bottles when we can. But there isn't any water up here. And Faramir said not to drink any water in Morgul. He's talking about in the valley once you go through the mountain to get on the other side. No water flowing out of Inland Morgul. Where's words? We're not in the valley. If we came on a spring here, it would be flowing into that valley, not out of it. Sam, still wouldn't trust it. Not till I was dying of thirst. And he goes, you smell that? Something stuffy. I don't like it. Frodo. And now we're getting to the part I really wanted to get to. I don't like anything here at all. Step or stone, breath or bone, earth, air, and water all seem accursed. But so our path is laid. When they first met up with Gollum, once he was tamed, what did Frodo say as they got to the beginning of the Dead Marshes? How do we shape our path now, Gollum? And it's kind of like, okay, they're in the Finns. Do we kind of do this and kind of have to hopscotch our way through? Now he says, this is how our path is laid. We've only got one direction. Sam. And Sam turns into literary theorist/critic. Yes, that's so. And we shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started. See, there's that definition of tragedy again. Sam is saying what? If last year, okay, because they're now in, when is this? Yeah, this is spring of the following year. This is late February, early March, I believe. I know when the conclusion is. I just don't remember where they are exactly here. He says, back when we were at Bag Inn and you and Gandalf were talking, and I was eavesdropping, if we knew then that we would be right here, never would have signed up. Well, me see elves and all? Hell no. Not if I got to go, to hell. But not quite hell. Real hell is going to be referred to in a moment. We shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started. But I suppose it's often that way. What is often that way? The brave things in the old tales and songs, Mr. Frodo. Adventures, as I used to call them. So notice what Sam is doing. He's equating what he and Frodo are doing with the old tales and songs. Why? What did Aragorn tell Éomer? Tell one of the writers? That you can walk in legends and on green grass at the same time. Why? Because we become the things that legends are made of in the future. But it's often that way. How? In the old tales. I used to think that they were things the wonderful folk of the stories went out and looked for because they wanted them, because they were exciting, and life was a bit dull, a kind of a sport, as you might say. Used to when?
Before.
Does he mean like yesterday? Before when?
They left the Shire. Before he found out what was.
When he agreed to go with Frodo. What? Me? Go and see elves and dwarves and all? Yay! He's thinking, this'll be fun, because life's kind of boring and dull in the Shire. What does Sam, Frodo says when he tells Gandalf, I need to leave the Shire, I want to protect the Shire. He says, I used to think, what we needed was a good earthquake. Something to rouse the Shire citizens out of their complacency. Okay? And it also kind of alludes to the beginning of The Hobbit. The Hobbit begins with Gandalf showing up, talking to Bilbo about an adventure, a journey. And Bilbo's like, we're hobbits. We don't like doing adventure. We don't do journeys. We do several meals a day, smoking pipes, drinking beer, and several more meals. That's our life. That's how we like it. And Gandalf essentially says, nevertheless, you need to go on this journey. And Bilbo kind of agrees. Once the dwarves start singing, he's filled with this desire to go out and have this adventure, as it's called. But that's not the way of it with the tales that really matter, or the ones that stay in the mind. What's he mean? The tales that really matter, or the ones that stay in the mind, the people that are in them don't go out seeking for adventure, seeking for glory, seeking for renown. He says, they seem to have been just landed in them usually. Their paths were laid that way. And I'll bring up the example I brought up last week. Those passengers on Flight 93. They didn't get in their planes that morning thinking, I'm going to go off. I'm going to have a great adventure. I'm going to bring down this plane full of terrorists, and people will say my name and blah. Nope. They were just, and like half the guys on that plane, or several of the people on that plane, it was a business trip from, I think, New York to LA and back, same day. I don't know if you've ever flown cross country. It's a pain. 5.5 hours one way to go out there for a 2-hour business trip and then come back. Okay? Sam, they just got landed in them. But I expect they had lots of chances, like us, of turning back, only they didn't. What were Sam's and Frodo's chances of turning back? Where could they have turned back? Rivendell? Earlier? Could they have turned back at Farmer Maggot's? Could they have turned back when Sam came back and told Frodo about the Dark Rider at his gaffer's house? Could have. But definitely Rivendell. Here's the blasted ring. You take it, you go destroy it. Lothlorien? They both saw things in the mirror. Sam wanted to go back then. Okay? And if they had turned in these old stories and gone back, he says, we shouldn't know because they'd have been forgotten. In other words, there wouldn't have been stories about them if they hadn't done whatever it was they did. We hear about those as just went on, and not all to a good end, mind you. At least not to what folk inside a story and not outside it call a good end. So let's take that image of that plane flight. What if, rather than calling their wives and business associates and talking about what's happening, they said, no, it's too dangerous. We can't try to attack them. We can't try to stop this. We wouldn't know about any of those guys. All they would be is statistics, those who died. But because they did try to do something, stories have been told. But notice, we wouldn't know if they hadn't communicated with the others. It's the others that told the stories. So, in order for there to be that kind of tale, someone has got to live and tell the story. Think Moby Dick. Anybody know how it opens? Call me Ishmael. One of the characters on the Pequod, the whaling boat that goes after the big white whale, lives. He's the last survivor. And the tale is told from his perspective. There are a bunch of works of literature that have characters like that who end up being the ones telling the story. So, if they had, we shouldn't know because they'd have been forgotten. We hear about those as just went on, and not all to a good end, right? At least not to what the people inside the story call a good end. I doubt that Top Beamer and all those other guys on the inside of that story thought that the end was a quote-unquote good end, right? They didn't get to go back home. They didn't see their wives and husbands and families. He never saw his unborn child. But to those outside the story, we kind of tend to think it was a good end. Was it the best end? No, because it would have been nice for them to go back home and live happily ever after. But why was it a good end and not a bad end? They stopped that plane from, general consensus is, from flying into the United States Capitol building. Okay, World Trade Center, horrible. I've been to the World Trade Center before it was destroyed. I'd been to the World Trade, walked by it, one time in New York. Big, shiny, ugliest thing. I mean, it's like Peck Hall, on steroids. Right? They were, two of them, in fact. Big, ugly, shiny steel and glass thing. Okay? A lot of people died there. Think of the Pentagon. So, economic capital, so to speak, military capital. Think of what the effect would have been if they destroyed the Capitol building. Okay? Notice my emphasis. It's just a building. It's just a building. You can rebuild it. There were people inside. They'd probably been evacuated by that point. But the symbolic power. You think the U.S. was pissed, as it was after 9/11. Destroyed the Capitol building would have made us a whole lot angry. Okay?
Not much almost any government stuff that would have been stored there would have been destroyed too.
Yeah. So, he says, what's those outside call a good end? Coming home, finding things all right, though not quite the same, like old Mr. Bilbo. When Bilbo comes home at the Hobbit, he finds the Sackville Bagginses had moved into his house. Like SOBs, okay? Had to kick them out and everything. I'm going to give something away, so I apologize. This is the happy ending Sam gets. We could literally turn to the very last page of the novel, and we will see Sam walks up Bagshot Row. His wife is waiting there at the door of number 4, Bagshot Row, Bag Inn, what had been Frodo's and Bilbo's house, welcomes him into the hole, sits him down in his, recliner, puts his daughter in his lap, and he says, well, that's it. I'm home. He gets the Disney happy ending. Frodo gets a different kind of happy ending. He doesn't get the girl, the house, the car, the baby, that kind of happy ending. Right? But those aren't always, the kind he's just said, the kind Sam gets, those aren't always the best tales to hear. Though they may be the best tales to get landed into or get landed in. Why may they not be the best tales to hear? Think of some of the great stories of, let's say, English culture and literature. Even if you've not read them, you've heard of them. Okay? Like King Arthur. King Arthur doesn't get the good happy ending. The good from the and they lived happily ever after. He gets the other kind of good happy ending. Romeo and Juliet, which is based upon an earlier thing, Tristan and Isolde. They don't get the good happy ending. They all die. Lancelot and Guinevere, they die. In some versions, in other versions, they both live, but apart. She becomes a nun, he becomes a monk. That's where adultery, kind of gets you and such. So what's he getting at? What's the best kind of story there is? I wonder what sort of tale we've fallen into. And notice the link he's just made. Our lives, their lives, are part of a story. Okay? Fredo, I wonder, but I don't know. And that's the way of a real tale. Take any one you're fond of. You may know or guess what kind of a tale it is, happy ending or sad ending, but the people in it don't know. And you don't want them to. I kind of think it's just an assumption. I don't really have any evidence to base it on. But I would be very surprised if any of those guys who charged the hijackers in that flight, I would be kind of surprised if none of them, let me rephrase this. I would be surprised if all of them thought they were all going to die, that they didn't have any chance of stopping the hijacking and living. I kind of think some of them probably thought, we can pull this off. We can kill them and still somehow land the plane. People who have not been pilots before have landed 737, 757s. They get on the radio and they say, all right, we're going to walk you through this, very, very slowly. Keep that,
I think there was one on board with flight experience that was supposed to land the plane after they
Okay.
in the cockpit.
Because the guys who captured it, they had flight experience, but it was all not landing. It was how to fly this thing into buildings. And you don't want them to. You don't want them to know how the tale will end. How many of you have read the Harry Potter novels? Or seen the films? Okay, that raises a little bit more. So you know kind of how it ends. I don't know how the film did because I haven't seen 7 and 8. I absolutely won't. That would be a good torture for me. Strap me to a chair, put the pins in my eyes to keep my lids open and make me watch, kind of a thing. What if Harry were to say, let me back up. At the end of the first, I'm going to give something away, but it's not all that important. At the end of the first book, Harry wants to know, he asks Dumbledore, why does so-and-so want to kill me? And Dumbledore says, you're too young. I'll tell you later. Go to the end of book 8, or book 7, film 8, I guess. What if Dumbledore says, all right, Harry, you've shown yourself. You've proven yourself. I'll tell you. Don't give anything away. I'm not giving it away. But what if he tells him right there in book 1? You think there's going to be a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Hell no. If an 11-year-old were to be told what's going to be required of him, he'd probably say, no, I'm not doing that. You find some other sacrificial pig. Here, take Neville. Not giving anything away, just, poor Neville. Okay? So, you don't want them to be in that story. I always use the example, talking about this stuff. Sophocles' Oedipus the King. Has anybody read that before? None of you. Okay, so I can give it all away. It's an old myth. It's an ancient Greek myth. It existed long before Sophocles wrote his play based upon it. And here's the basic outline. There's a king and queen. She's pregnant. They're the king and queen of Thebes. She's pregnant. They receive a prophecy. The prophecy is, the child that you are bearing in your womb right now will kill you, King Laius, and marry you, Jocasta, his mother, and have children by you. Incest, in other words. And they're like, ew, no. So when the baby is born, okay, I'm pretty staunchly against abortion, but I'd make an exception in this case. If it were my wife and I had a prophecy, and I believed that the prophecy was true, and that the person who told the prophecy had never been wrong. I don't remember if in other mythic versions, if Tiresias is the one that brings the prophecy. I think he is. He's a prophet who is never wrong in Greek literature. Ever. So you can pretty much, if he says, put all your money on, you can bank on that, okay? I would say, well, okay, I'll make an exception here. If he's going to kill me and sleep and bring, whatever. No. So the child was born. They take a nail, like a 9-inch nail, and drive it through the ankles. Outside of the right ankle, inside of the right ankle, inside of the left ankle, outside of the left ankle. Nail his feet together, take him, drop him off on a mountain to die so that wild animals can eat him. Okay? Kid gets picked up. I'm leaving a lot out. Kid gets picked up, taken to another town to live. The parents, his adoptive parents, love him. They're also a king and queen. Okay? Later on, when he's older, parents are having a party, and a drunk stands up. You're not who you say you are, and you're going to kill your father. And he's like, what the hell? And he goes and speaks to his parents. Don't worry about it. It's not true. We love you. But it eats away at his mind. So he goes to the Oracle of Delphi, where Apollo speaks to the oracle. And the oracle says, you are fated to kill your father, marry your mother, sleep with her, and raise a horrid brood that should never see the light of day. And he's like, ew, no. What does he do? What would you do in that situation? I see you have 2 options. Okay, 3 options. Nah, not going to happen. You go back home. Okay. What are the other 2 options?
Not gonna happen, I'm leaving.
What?
Not gonna happen,
Not going to happen. I'm leaving.
So that doesn't happen.
I'm going to run as far away from mom and dad as I can because no, hell no. It's what Freud, by the way, bases almost all of his psychological theories on. You know, the whole Freudian complex, every man actually wants to replace his father, sleep with his mother, and all that. The reverse of that, the Electra complex, is based on another play by Sophocles about a girl who has a dream about wanting to replace her mother in her father's bed. And you've got like 98% of porn on the internet, just right there, those 2 stories. Okay? So, where was I? What's the third option? So one, go back home and say, oh, it's not going to happen. Second option, run away.
Kill yourself?
Yeah. You know, not going to do it. He takes option number 2. He runs away. And in running away, he meets some guy on the road, and the guy won't move out of his way, so boom, kills him. Keeps following the road. Road takes him to the town of Thebes. There's a Sphinx, like the one in Giza, Egypt. The Sphinx has a riddle. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs in the afternoon, 3 legs at night? He answers it. The people of Thebes welcome him in as a conquering hero. Oh, by the way, we have a queen. She's yours if you want her. And he marries her. And he has children with her. So what one thing do you never do if you're prophesied to kill your father? No?
Your father?
Never kill a man old enough to be your father. Pretty simple. So, like all of you guys in here, you can kill each other all you want, right? Because there's no chance one of you is the father of another one. I mean, me, however, you could all just stand up and, you know, right? By trying to run away from fate, trying to outwit fate, he causes fate to happen. Okay? That's why you don't want them to know. If Oedipus were to discover at the beginning of the play, and he's told fairly early on, you're the murderer. You're the murderer you seek. He's like, get out of here. You're conspiring against me. It takes the entire play for him to come to what's called the recognition, to understand you, really you know, that everything that's happened has happened because of his actions. So, Sam says, no, sir, of course not. Of course you don't want them to know. Baron now. He goes back to Baron. We heard about Baron and Luthien on Weathertop. Aragorn sang the song. Baron now. He never thought he was going to get that Silmaril from the Iron Crown and Thangorad Rim, yet he did. That was a worse place in blacker danger than ours. Now, Sam's doing a little bit of projecting possibly there. He doesn't know exactly what Baron thought, I think Barron was probably like one or two, at least, of those guys in those planes, or in that plane, who thought, there's a chance we might live still, like 1% maybe, but that's still a chance. Okay? He says, Barron didn't think he was going to get that submarine, but he did. And that was even a worse place than we're in. So earlier when I said, they're going into hell, this is like the porch to hell. Hell really would be where Barron and Luthien went into. Melkor's fortress. I mean, Sauron's like a kindergartner kid compared to Melkor. He's a peon. He's a lowlife, all right? So, but that's a long tale, of course, and goes on past the happiness and into grief and beyond it. Why? Because he dies and then it's brought back to life and they get to live a little few more years and then they both die and go off. And the Silmaril went on and came to Eärendil. And they could look up at the sky at night and point to that star and say, and there it is. There's Eärendil. The reason there is a light, there is that star. It's not a flaming ball of gas. Right? It is because of the light of the Silmaril. And then Sam connects the two. And why, sir, I never thought of that before. You've got some of the light of it. The Silmaril that Beren cut from Morgoth's crown. You've got some of that light in that star glass that the lady gave you. And then smack him upside the head with a 2x4. We're in the same tale. So they thought that story ended a long time ago. Don't the great tales never end? Frodo, no, they never end as tales, but the people in them come and go when their part's ended. Our part will end later, pause, or sooner. Why or sooner?
You never know what's going to happen.
Okay, true. But that holds with later, too. So why sooner? What's he betraying? What's he telling us about how he thinks or what he thinks of their chance of success? Let me put it that way.
They're fated to not succeed.
We're going to die.
We're on the edge of hell, and as soon as we step foot, we're going to die.
Here's the closing of our part in the tale. Come on, Sam. He's saying our lines are almost done. Okay? In the fairy story essay, at the end, you have what's called the epilogue. Okay? I've not been able to discover, when I was working on, trying to do an edition of this and looked at all the manuscript, everything that survives, that Tolkien ever wrote that became part of that essay, first published in 1947 and then later on in 1965. I could never find whether the epilogue was part of the orally delivered address in 1938. Nobody knows, okay? Because we don't have the copy that he lectured from. The epilogue is all about connecting everything he said in the 60-odd pages of the essay with the Christian story, or what he calls the greatest story ever told, the story of the gospel, the incarnation, birth, death, resurrection of Christ. Because he says that is the most perfect story ever told, and it's the most true story ever told. And this is where I'm getting to what he says here. And it's the one to which every other story is connected. What's he mean? He means all stories that we make up, all, great fiction. Stephen King's The Stand, great novel. The Dark Tower series, really good until you get to the end of the last book. And then it's like, okay? Harry Potter stuff, this stuff, Silmarillion, tons of stuff. Tolkien says they're all like little tributaries flowing into this one great story. And I think he does that for a couple of reasons. One of which is this. He's trying, in that essay, to give meaning to what he spends most of his day doing. Making up a story. I mean, he's kind of justifying his actions there. Because a lot of people at Oxford, when he was working on this, The Hobbit, Stories of the Silmarillion, were a little upset at him because he wasn't churning out academic scholarship. I mean, he was hired to be an academic scholar, to publish. He, relatively speaking, he did not publish a great amount. What he published was great, but he didn't publish a huge quantity, okay? And it's kind of his, what I'm doing has value. It has worth, because it's all tied, to the great story. So, Sam, and then we can have some rest and sleep. Now, I don't know if Sam means by that, nice good 10, 12-hour sleep and get up and eat, or if it's, the great final sleep, the sleep that one wakes up somewhere else, okay? 7:13. Sam's still thinking about story, okay? And Sam's talked, bottom of the previous page, about the story they are in, and he's kind of created a story. I want to hear Dad about the story of Frodo and the ring. Frodo kind of makes fun of him. Sam's like, don't, this is serious. Okay? 7:13, Sam then says, I wonder what part Gollum thinks he plays in the story. Well, even Gollum might be good in a tale, better than he is to have Bayou anyway. Right? Where do you really want Gollum? Do you want Gollum here or here? I want Gollum here. Because if he's here, what would I always have to do? Yeah, watch your back, okay? He used to like Tales himself once, by his own account. I wonder if he thinks he's the hero or the villain. And he calls out, Gollum, would you like to be the hero? Oh, I never made that connection. I've been teaching this thing for 30 years. Light bulb. Huh. Would you like to be the hero? No, where's he got to again? And Gollum has gone off somewhere. Okay? So, bottom of the page. Frodo says, I don't think Gollum has only one plan in his head. Okay? He really is in part trying to save the precious from the enemy, as long as he can. Why? Because if Sauron gets the ring, that's not good for Gollum. Not only will Gollum die, okay, but probably Sauron will extend his life and torture him before he dies. So, they fall asleep. And Sam says, you need to sleep. So Sam sits down on the ground, leans up against the wall. Frodo lays down, puts his head in Sam's lap. Sam puts one hand on Frodo's forehead and another hand on his chest. Why? Some people have said this is some homoerotic, thing. No. It's our idiot society. Why does he put his hands on him?
To make sure he doesn't disappear.
Bingo. Frodo moves, Sam's going to wake up. This is his alarm system. Okay?
Couldn't you also do it to kind of like shield him from some of the rain too?
Well,
Maybe if he puts his hand over, maybe he'll kind of.
we're not told that he puts his hand over the ring, just on his chest. We do know the ring is around a chain on his chest. Okay? And then we get this. And so Gollum found them years later, page 714. When he returned, crawling and creeping down the path out of the gloom ahead, Sam sat propped against the stone, his head dropping sideways and his breathing heavy. In his lap lay Frodo's head, drowned deep in sleep. Upon his white forehead lay one of Sam's brown hands, and the other lay softly upon his master's breast. Peace was in both their faces. So notice, it's kind of indicated that's what Gollum sees. The narrator's giving us that from Gollum's perspective. Gollum looked at them. A strange expression passed over his lean, hungry face. The gleam faded from his eyes, and they went dim and gray, old and tired. A spasm of pain seemed to twist him, and he turned away, peering back up towards the pass, shaking his head as if engaged in some interior debate. Now, in Western cultures, United States, Europe, most of South America, what does this mean? No, not, negative, bad, evil. Okay? He looks up the passage that he just came down, and he shakes his head, which kind of implies no. Then he came back, and slowly putting out a trembling hand, very cautiously he touched Frodo's knee, but almost the touch was a caress. Why the knee? We talked about this the other day. Could be servitude. Earlier, when at the taming of Smeagol, Frodo says down, and Smeagol is down on kind of like, on his knees, and we're told he's fawning at Frodo's knees. And I talked about in the classical tradition, in the Old Testament tradition, when someone puts their hands on your knees or clasps their arms around your knees, it's an act of supplication. It's an act of seeking something, often mercy, sometimes a blessing. Gollum, notice Gollum could touch any part of Frodo. He could touch his head, he could touch his elbow, he could touch his toe, he could touch his chest, his stomach, anything. He touches the knee, and we're told it's almost a caress. So what's the difference between and what's a caress? What does a caress indicate? With love, with tenderness, with feeling. Okay? It's almost the touch was a caress. For a fleeting moment, could one of the sleepers have seen him, they would have thought that they beheld. Now, notice, they don't see him. But the narrator is telling us what they would have thought. If they had seen, this is what they would have thought. That they beheld an old, weary hobbit, shrunken by the years that had carried him far beyond his time, beyond friends and kin, family, in the fields and streams of youth, an old, starved, pitiable thing. Why is that significant, or why is that important? What do we really see there?
Smeagol and Diagon.
Okay, Diagon was the guy that he killed.
Yes. But before he had.
Keep going. You're being very tentative, which I understand.
Is it like humanizes Gollum?
Yeah, hobbitizes, yeah, but humanizes it. It makes him what? Part of this community, part of this group. Like being welcomed back into the society of hobbits. Notice, the two hobbits would have seen an old, weary, pitiable hobbit. When Gandalf first starts talking to Frodo about Gollum, what does Frodo say? What does he refuse to believe? That he's a hobbit. So it's like the three become one, almost. All right? But when he touches, gives that almost soft caress, Frodo stirs and cries out. It's not like he says, "Who the hell's touching me?" He just stirs and kind of like, oh, because he was so deeply asleep. And the first thing Sam sees is what? Gollum pawing at Master. That is not. And he says, we're told roughly, "Hey you, what are you up to?" Nothing, said Gollum softly. Nice master. Nice master is not referring to Sam. He's talking about Frodo. Okay. Gollum is on a knife edge right here. At this point, I think, I could be entirely wrong. I don't know if Tolkien intended this. I don't remember if he refers to this passage in his letters. I don't think I've ever thought about that before. I should probably look. But I think at this point, Gollum's on the knife edge between full cure, redemption, and the opposite. Sam, I dare say, but where have you been to? Sneaking off and sneaking back, you old villain. Okay, why did I say knife edge? Look at the next paragraph. Gollum withdrew himself. I love this sentence. And a green glint flickered under his heavy lids. There's that glint. But notice he withdraws. He pulls back, both literally and figuratively. He pulls back, but what else does that mean figuratively?
His dual personality withdrawals as well.
Gollum withdraws Smeagol. It's like down, you're never coming out again. Almost spider-like he looked now, foreshadowing. Crouched back on his bent limbs with his protruding eyes, the fleeting moment has passed beyond recall. I think that means beyond Gollum's recall. Even if he wanted to remember, 2 minutes ago, gone, buried. So, in response to, where have you been to? Sneaking off and sneaking back?
Sneaking. Hobbits always so polite. Yeah, so nice hobbits. Smeagol brings them up secret ways that nobody else can find. Tired he is, thirsty is, yes, thirsty. And he guides them and he searches for paths and they say, sneak. Very nice friends. Oh, yes, my precious, very nice.
Notice whom Gollum is addressing. No. Well, I mean, when he said my precious, yes. Who's he talking about? Sam and Frodo. He doesn't only respond to Sam. He equates Frodo with Sam's comments. Has Frodo said anything? No. Sam felt a bit remorseful, though not more trustful. Sorry, I'm sorry, you startled me out of my sleep. Does that remorse do any good? Why not? That's pity. That's pity. What did Sam not practice? He didn't cut Gollum some slack. Why not? Go back to what we're told. The first thing he saw was Gollum pawing at Master as he thought. Notice, his thinking determines what? What he sees. The narrator told us what was Gollum doing. Touching, almost caressing. Sam thinks he sees Gollum pawing at him. Now, if we take Tolkien's narrator, to be a reliable narrator and telling the truth, then we have to take the narrator's truth. And I don't mean this as this is my truth, and this is your truth, and this is the narrator speaking the truth. Sam's perceptions are what is faulty. Why are his perceptions faulty? Because his thought process about Gollum is faulty. Is Gollum to be trusted? No. But he lets that doubt govern everything. Okay? So, they go on. We're going to skip a whole bunch in the minute we have. They get attacked by Shelob. What is Shelob?
Big spider.
How big? About the size of this room. And she's not even the biggest one that's ever lived. Her great Ungoliant was the mama spider, you know. What happens to Frodo? He's stung by Shelob, and what does Sam think? Go on to the next chapter. Choices of Master Samwise. He thinks Frodo's dead. Where has he seen this? Galadriel mirror. So, what are the choices he has? He thinks Frodo's dead. Quest is over. He's got like 3 choices. 1, stay here with Frodo, in which case the quest is over. Eventually, they're going to come find him. 2,
Take the ring yourself.
take the ring, go on. Take the ring and go back. Can't go back. That wouldn't fulfill the quest. Take the ring, go on. He takes the ring. He takes the file, the glass thing. He takes Sting. And what does he discover just before the end of the chapter?
Then he's still alive.
Frodo's still alive, and Sam made a Sam choice. His name, Samwise, means half-wise. Oops. Okay. So now, if we're living in 1954, and we've just finished 2 Towers, we have to wait a year to figure out what happens to Frodo and Sam. And 1955 rolls around, and we get the Return of the King, and what does Tolkien pick up with?
The other one.
Minas freaking Tirith! We're not picking up with Frodo and Sam. We're back with Gandalf and Pippin and Minas Tirith. Okay, that's where we will pick up. Like I said, finish Return of the King. We will definitely finish it a week from today, and I may skip a hell of a lot and finish it on Thursday. There is a lot we will actually skip. Singing and